Good morning. I'm Russell Templin. I'm Senior Vice President of our healthcare group at J.E. Dunn Construction.
And I'm Sam O'Connor, National Healthcare Pre-Construction Director.
Disclaimer right off the top. We're not talking about a product today. We're not talking about pods and racks and that type of stuff. So because prefab innovation, what's going on right now is it's a process. And we want to talk more to the process than we do to the product. So that's what you're going to hear as we talk today. And one of the first thing is, why should you use prefab? Why should we go in these innovation ways? Well, our three top subjects right now are the labor shortage that we're seeing with our trade partners, quality, and then cost certainty and schedule certainty. All those things can be controlled through off-site manufacturing. Let's get away from the word prefab. Let's get away from what it is, but let's talk about what we're trying to do. And as we've done this in the past, we've judged it more off of labor off-site, put it in a manufacturing setting where you can control the cost, you can control the quality, and you can take it out of the main time frame of the way you build construction. So it puts it at a different level. And as we've gone through since 2019, we've seen that we may need to move aspects of the project into different time frames and not have to wait and do it conventionally.
Yeah, and one thing I'd like to add too is kind of the timing of some of the decision making and collaboration required in the design phase. I think that's one thing also that is a huge benefit to a prefab initiative on a job, is you're really setting an expectation as a client, as an owner, on how a contractor and a designer should behave and work together and pull that forward in the process, right? So the more engagement and the more decisions that we can make that are mitigating risks on the project down the road earlier in the design phase are going to have an impact on quality of drawings, quality of how fast we can onboard design assist trade partners and their knowledge and expectations of the project goals. And so I think that's one undervalued aspect. When we think of prefabrication as a product, we lose the fact that a lot of the prefabrication initiatives are not a fully complete modular piece of a puzzle piece. A lot of it can be within a contractor's scope of work. If we set an expectation that we want assemblies and kitting done at their warehouse brought on site instead of doing that all on the job site, that's a change in mentality to a lot of contractors, and it's going to force a lot of that design coordination earlier on so that it can get documented appropriately as well. So
these components have gotten a bad name, let's say, because of the fact when you think prefab, when you think something pre-manufactured, you think it has to look the same. It has to look the same every time that you build it. That's really not the case. Every project, every program, and again, I think one of the advantages that the component system brings to, it doesn't just bring it to a project, it brings it to the program, and we're going to dig into that a little bit deeper here in a few minutes. But it can be customized. It should be customized. I mean, if you want a bathroom pod to look a particular way, that's a decision, to Sam's point, that's a decision that's made early in the project, and you look at that and say, we want the bathroom to look that way, not we want a pod to be a bathroom. So then you take your concept for whatever component you're building, and you customize it to what you want for that facility, that project, that program. So it's not something that is going to look manufactured. We want it to look custom all the time.
yeah, and so maybe I'm getting a little ahead here, but kind of the standardization of healthcare modalities, right? So coming off a space planning discussion, when we look at the different functional program boxes that we're putting into all the different types of facilities, whatever acuity it might be, there really aren't that many when it really shakes out, right? Exam rooms, we could have admin offices, we can have ORs, procedure rooms, PACU bay, whatever. So there's these modulars that we see across all a whole scope of work for a system. And so some of that legwork that can be done as an entity on, okay, when we talk exam rooms, here's our latest prototype that we want to start with for a build program. Maybe it's a new outpatient clinic or whatever. That's a great runway for then the project team to take it from there and say, now what's the best way we can modularize or prefab based on that standardization from like a room data sheet perspective, and build some economies of scale as we start to shake out this floor plate and start to lay this building out. That's going to give us some of that ability to stay economical and really tee these trades up for success moving forward, knowing they're crunched for labor, knowing they're crunched for quality skilled tradesmen right now. We really have to think about simplification, standardization, and pulling some of that work earlier into the schedule so that it can be a lower bell curve of a labor scale on the job site.
There's still conversation of is the components, is prefab more expensive? Is it, there's the whole conversation. Like I said in the opening, cost certainty, schedule certainty. If you can set a budget at the beginning of the project, whether that's conventional or prefab, a lot of times it doesn't matter because the trade partners are already doing prefab behind the scenes. They're the ones leading. They're the one fighting this labor shortage. So they're the one trying to maximize their labor at every point. So if you can set the budget, work the budget all the way through the project from concept to completion, and then the same way with schedule, if you can move, we worked through several different natural scenarios over the past few years, as well as delivery scenarios over the past few years that everybody's feeling some of the delivery crunches as well. By making those decisions early, by building the components and even setting them in a warehouse waiting for them for the right time to bring them on site. Again, then you have a better effort to overcome schedule delay that you might have with all these things that could happen. Again, not going to... We have found at this point, large construction projects, it can be cost neutral. It is cost neutral. To Sam's point about the standardization, also the exterior is very important as well. We're having a lot of success with the exterior skin, getting the buildings dried in. Again, schedule certainty. The quicker we can get it dried in, the quicker we can go to finishing the building.
Yeah, and actually, only because I always have to show my cool nerd graphic. Can you hit the pie chart? So another way I like to describe, so when we do the inevitable first cost evaluation of a prefab component versus a stick-built component, what are the couple ways that we have to fund future risk on the job? One is an escalation contingency. What does pulling prefab components earlier into the process mitigate? Escalation risk, right? So we're buying some of the project earlier in the timeline of the job, which will mitigate that back-end risk that would have been later on in the job. Sometimes that doesn't show up in a first cost analysis when you're talking stud for stud. That's one of them. Schedule recovery, right? That's another one that can hit construction contingency. You end up having to pay some overtime or owner contingency to jam the schedule on the backside for reasons uncontrollable or whatever it might be. Again, this is another risk mitigation card we can play early on the process to give us a lever to pull as jobs go on. And what I like about this chart is target the risk, right? So this is a pie graph on how we would typically divide up the cost of a acute care hospital, South Central United States price points. So if you're in California, don't look at those numbers. You'll get sad real quick. But you can see the risk, right? The whole blue area is buried in the walls on the riskiest trades we have in the environment right now. Electrical, plumbing, mechanical contractors is over 50% of the cost of the job. We have to focus our attention on them being successful and not leave it up to chance. And that's another reason this prefabrication pulls that collaboration, it pulls the constructability back upstream in the drawing process and will help us build that economy of scale to help them be successful on the job site, which is what makes all jobs successful.
That risk becomes extremely important in this market. There are market segments, industries outside this room right now that are really driving cost and driving manpower, labor, quality, all the things that if we can take those elements and push them into a different time frame of a project and the process, it just does, it mitigates that risk we have. I will say this, if you get behind on a project right now, there is not labor to buy your way out of bringing that project back on schedule. You have to take matters into your own hands up front to mitigate that risk, because there's just not the labor force just isn't out there to, if a project does get in trouble, to try to help bring it back.
Yeah, so when it comes to implementation, a lot of questions that we get project to project is the when. How do we implement this? When do we need to be doing this discussion? If you're in construction documents and you start to say, what if we prefabbed the bathrooms right now, it's too late. It's gonna have sticker shock because you didn't design for prefab. Now, if we start the discussion a lot earlier, and I love the time frame of kind of that end of SD, beginning of DD. An architect described it to me, which I thought was a great analogy. It's the building's kind of a bowl full of Jell-O at that point, right? So you've got the hospital you've got the boundaries. You know how many square feet is targeted, but the walls are kind of loosey-goosey, and you haven't quite fully coordinated the structure. You haven't quite laid out the full MEP systems yet. And so that's the perfect time to say, all right, now we're jiggling this bowl full of Jell-O and we're settling it in. Now let's really take that focused look on economies of scale for our trades and our prefab initiatives on the job site that fit the program, that fit the standardized building blocks that we've got within the acuity of the project. And that's really a great time to influence design and build in that economies of scale kind of in that first half of DD time frame. And then you're polishing it up with the products you want to select to kind of in that back end of DD, beginning of CD, when we actually start talking about what wall system do you want to go with for an enclosure and that type of discussion. So that to me is this precursor of standardization from an entity, from a campus, or from a system-wide initiative is a step one building block that really sets up the expectation. And then you kind of let the designers, ebb and flow and do their program adjacencies and work best with the site parameters. And then when SD ends, that's a great time to kind of dive into the real project-specific prefab initiatives and, see if we can make all 30 staff bathroom head wall, wet wall the exact same across the whole floor plate.
Lastly, you've heard this from us. We've done this with owners. It's been extremely successful. So we did a similar presentation a few months ago, and Eugene Wright, our owner with Atrium Health, couldn't be with us today. So we brought him via video, and then we'll let you see what he says about some of the processes that we're doing.
It all right?
Yeah, so from our standpoint, again, I told you we jumped off with this 50% benchmark that we wanted to do. And just to put the womp into this, we didn't hit 50% because we started to really clarify what it was we were going after, right? And once we started clarifying, like I said, that repeatability, that cost certainty, we decided to focus a lot of our energies over certain things over others. Assumedly, anything can be prefabbed. We wanted to focus our energies on specific things that we could also repeat across our deployment of multiple facilities over the future. So I believe the product that preceded this, was a larger bed tower, many more repeatable units. I think that tracked its percentage by cost. We decided to track ours by man hours offsite. Mm-hmm. So it's a very different metric, but we think it tells the story of why we did prefab and what we accomplished. So we're around 30% now, just to tell you, which is still pretty phenomenal, I think. For the Southeast, for a small hospital, 36-bed hospital that does not have a lot of repeatable units. Yes, there's 36 beds, but over half the building is, one CT room, one shell, 2 ORs. A lot of things are just not repeatable in the D&T level of that.
That's right.
But one success story that came out of that, again, this is maybe how you might rethink what it is you're measuring the bigger impact, is we now have a series of standard head walls, a standard patient toilet, racking methodology for MVP racks that can be distributed to any other of our facilities across the enterprise that we're moving forward with. And it has become our standard.
Yeah.
So now we have that quick pull to say, all right, here's our standard bathroom, here's our standard patient room, and you have the cost certainty to know that, well, it cost me X yesterday, but with a little bit of 2% inflation, maybe it's X times 1.02.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, He's just describing the journey that that client has been on with really trying to deploy it over a whole portfolio of projects. And so his comments to me were very indicative of don't be scared of it, because we still will right size the level of prefab that the job needs and wants. And don't be scared by trying to set up some standards to then use as kind of the baseline expectation across a group of projects.
And lastly, he said, we reached 30% on that by man hours. Don't be scared to set a goal, and don't be scared to fail, to not meet that goal, because if you don't set a big goal, you won't strive for the goal. And something, especially in this case, some is better than nothing. So with that, again, disclaimer, not for everybody, but the process can be used in all cases. So thank you for your time. We'll do questions if you have any.
Oh, perfect. We've got a question right back here.
Real quick, I see the numbers up there. Obviously, we're all driven by numbers, but when you did the 36-bed little micro hospital, and you did prefab, and you get no order of magnitude out of that, I mean, that's small. Where was the benefit? Was it cost? Was it expediency in use?
Yeah, so cost-wise, we were very economical. One, we had buy power because it was a system-wide agreement for, we did not, so if you have 36 beds, you're buying 36 bathroom pods, but they were buying 200 of them, in a calendar year, enterprise-wide. And so we bought our 36 as part of a broader agreement, so they got some buy power in that situation, again, from a product mentality. But a lot of our labor hours are at a trade level. So we're working with the trades, and we're coaching them up on, we need assemblies brought to the job site. And that's going to some of our labor offsets as well. And that's really no financial difference. I mean, it's a labor hour is a labor hour, whether they're doing it in a shop or have the same shop set up on a job site to assemble and put things in place. So cost-wise too, so we do a lot of granular cost looking like this. We also roll all our metrics up into a dashboard, and job end cost is, we don't see any anomaly on a heavy prefab job being 10% more or anything like that. They're right in line with the cluster of greenfield not-for-profit hospitals. They have their own little category here. Institutional work is a little bit to the right here, over here. It doesn't move the needle on an overall more than I think some people think it does.
Yeah, that was going to be my next point. This one had this budget was set before the pandemic. We started the project, it came back to life after the pandemic, and it had an extremely tight schedule for its opening. So again, having that schedule certainty, and that job's in Charlotte. Again, the market's stretched there. So trying to get the labor to stick build this building would have been the schedule. If you come to me now and say, give me a schedule for a job, I'm gonna give you a schedule. And then if you come back to me and say, well, you can't prefab anything, well, my schedule's gonna be longer.
Okay, we do have one last question over here.
Yeah, thanks. I just had a question. What's your opinion of the high side of man hours that could be, or trade hours off-site on a bigger project, 300, 600 bed type hospital?
I would say that we would probably strive for, we'd set the goal again, even on a big project like that, because we'd set that goal at 50% again, and it would probably get closer to 40, would be where we would be.
The other cool stat that I really like to share with active campus jobs too is the peak of our bell curve comes way down. And so on a big job where you have 950 people showing up, if we can lower that to peak workforce hours to 750, that's 200 less people we have to shuttle or park. You know how that goes. So that's a huge impact too, is just lowering that bell curve, and you're pushing those hours to the right, flattening it and squishing it. So you're still having a lot of, but that's a huge benefit as well.
Just real quick, I'm out of time, real quick. Safety's
And
huge.
safety, of
Safety's
course. Oh my
huge,
gosh,
yeah.
for real.
We cut, on a particular project, we cut the electrical manpower by half on site. So that's the opportunity there. Thank y'all.